Mabilis ang basa na ating libro, guys. Kapwa Pilipino, magbasa na tayo ng ating history. Mabilis ngayon kasi may pasok alaga natin. Today is 27 February 2023. Ulitin ko lang ha. History of the Filipino People by Agoncillo and Guerrero. 27 February 2023, History of the Filipino People, Part 5, The Warriors. Topic number 22, The Japanese Occupation. Paragraph, Cultural Aspects. Basa. Cultural aspects, aside from slapstick comedies presented before pleasure-hungry populace, there were the movie theaters which presented pre-war American films. These films, however, were previously censored by the authorities to make sure that they were of the harmless type. In between presentations of American films were Japanese films glorifying the Japanese war machine and way of life, certainly the kind of propaganda materials that the Filipino audience got tired of because of their banality. More serious in purpose, however, were the plays staged at the old Metropolitan Theater. In 1943, a group of college actors formed the Dramatic Philippines Incorporated, whose purpose was to bring to the stage some popular plays in English. These plays were adapted into Tagalog. The response of the public was tremendous. Dramatic critics and critics hailed the Dramatic Philippines the white hope of the stage. Tapusin lang pala natin to, guys, kasi bukas iba na tayo ng ng topic. 23 na. Okay. Under the society's management and direction, such plays as Passion Play, episode 7 Case to Baldpate, Serrano de Bergerac, The Husband of Mrs. Cruz, Julius Caesar, Golden Boy, all adapted in Tagalog, in Sa Pula Sa Puti, an adaptation of Julian Cruz Balmacidas. Isang kwaltang abaka won the hearts of even the so-called Bakya crowd. Good music by classical composers was furnished. Ulitin ko, guys. Good music by classical composers was furnished by Musical Philippines Incorporated, a sister organization of Dramatic Philippines Incorporated, which presented several concerts of the Metropolitan Theater. One concert, a marimba solo by a Japanese musician, made the Filipino audience forget the nationality of the soloist owing to his brilliant and sensitive performance, although once in a while a few among the boors giggled softly at the sight of the soloist jumping like a frog in an attempt to reach the farthest bars. Such concerts provided the people, the elite as well as the masses, with enjoyment, no matter how fleeting, which made them forget temporarily the rigors and cruelties of the war. Filipino literature in English was moribund during the enemy occupation. The Japanese discouraged the Filipinos from writing in English by suppressing, on the one hand, the magazine section of the Manila Tribune, the only English daily at the time, and by encouraging the writers in Tagalog on the other. As the official language, Tagalog became popular, and some writers in English who could not sell their literary wares to the Tribune and the Philippine Review began to wrestle with Tagalog in order to write in it and earn a little to make both ends meet. After the fall of Corregidor, the Japanese administrators of the Manila Sinbonsya, headed by Mrs. Kenichi Ishikawa, and Murakami, both American-educated, called a meeting of writers in Tagalog and discussed with them the problems of Tagalog letters. There was unanimity in the belief that Tagalog writers were not paid decently enough. Ishikawa promised that with the Liwayway, the only Tagalog weekly allowed to continue publication under the Japanese stamp, the writers would be paid handsomely. The promise was fulfilled, and scores of writers began to manufacture short stories and verses a la Japanese haiku. Guys, yung mga pangalan ha, mahirapan talaga tayo magsalita kasi nga Japanese siya. There was no freedom of expression, and consequently, the writers were limited in their subject matters. The favorite subject was the rural scene, a subject that was neglected in pre-war days. Considering the time and circumstance, the occupation period nevertheless produced some good writing, mostly in the short story. The Japanese civilian authorities who had read the English resume of all the materials published were impressed and appointed a committee to choose the best stories. The result was an anthology entitled Ang 25 Pinakamabuting Tagalogin ko rin. Ang 25 Pinakamabuting Maikling Kathang Pilipino ng 1943. Biglang in English. The 25 best Filipino short stories of 1943. Published in 1944. Among the half-dozen or so magazines that the Japanese published to become popular, the Philippine Review and Pillars. The former published all types of literature, from poems to historical articles and pure propaganda materials. The Pillars, on the other hand, ulitin ko nga guys. The former published all types of literature, from poems to historical articles and pure propaganda materials. The Pillars, on the other hand, though not as popular as the Review, nevertheless became the refuge of those in dire need of a few hundred pesos to purchase a kilo of coffee corn or a few pieces of roasted coconut meat which passed for chestnut. The cultural scene therefore was dismal. Ano ba yan? Ulitin ko ulit. The cultural scene therefore was dismal. Ewan ko bakit ngayon mali-mali ang ko. Magbasa rin kayo guys para masuntan nyo ako dito. Okay, the cultural scene therefore was dismal. The important prerequisite for the development and eventual flowering of art and letters, namely freedom of expression and of the press, was lacking. The writer's hands were tied, and he could move them barely enough to portray or depict harmless subjects. For example, a rural scene in the manner of Fernando Amorsolo, but a searching criticism of life of which literature is the forebear. There was none. Nonetheless, it must be admitted that the Japanese, more than the Americans, encouraged the development of Tagalog and gave to it an impetus never before witnessed. Whether their purpose was selfish or not is immaterial. The fact remains that the Japanese helped the writer in Tagalog rediscover the beauty and the potentialities of his native language. So, bukas guys, na tayo? Topic number 23, the liberation. Bye everyone. God bless.